high school football season is upon us, and I'm looking forward to helping spotlight top teams and players from around the state, from the preseason scrimmages all the way to the state championships and the Superdome in December and everything in between. Thanks so much for checking out Louisiana vs. All Y'all. Hope you might take a second and hit that subscribe button below. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I teamed up with a group of great high school sports reporters from all over the state with a wide range of backgrounds, print, television, radio, digital, from 10 different regions around the state, just to make sure that we're sharing as many perspectives and previews from every corner of the state as we prepare to officially kick things off in less than 2 weeks. For Class 1A, we begin in Baton Rouge with the Hall of Famer Robin Fambrough of The Advocate, and then go to Eric Richey of VSN and River Parish Football. But you'll hear from everyone from around the state and can check out links to their work in the description section below. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in with Robin and the reigning Division IV Select champion Southern Lab Kittens.
I mean, might as well start with 9-1A, where you have a reigning champion in Southern Lab, along with the great rivalry they've had for decades with Kentwood out east, and those two are joined by Central Private and Thrive Academy in 9-1A. I know the Kittens have a lot of key pieces to replace, but they're kind of similar to some other teams that you've talked about, where they expect to win every year at this point. They were talking about it at the Superdome that they wanted to go win it again this year. So what do you see from those Kittens in that 9-1A group?
Well, I mean, they expect to win, and one of the breakout players last year was Coach's son, Amarian Asbury, who kind of an incredible story, reshaped his body and did a lot of things coming back from a very, very serious injury that took a couple of years to overcome. And he's now a Southern commitment, so the Jaguars are happy, and he's going to be happy to be there. Right now, I think, or the last time I talked to him, Jared Botley is in line to be the next quarterback. That's a key piece, but when you have a guy like Denham Hunt to throw to, who's a kind of a security blanket and a very, very fast guy, that helps. They have other receivers because on a team like this, you turn them around 1A, you turn them around, they play DB, they play wide receiver, and you never know who's going to step up and make a play. But the biggest thing, two big things for them, they returned 5 linemen, and several of those guys are two-way guys and they're standouts. And if those guys can stay healthy, that can give the rest of the offense time to mature and kind of to get their bearings. And they have a new defensive coordinator who's very well known around the Baton Rouge area, Lamar Thomas, who's been at multiple schools. He was actually a head coach at White Castle at one point. And again, he's very well respected, so that's a great get for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Down the River Parishes in that same district in 10-1A. West St. John, obviously, it's been tough for them since COVID and the storm and all these things that have happened in recent years. Riverside Academy, meanwhile, in terms of the select side, has established itself as one of the top, consistent contenders for potential state championship type level, a deep playoff team. And they came up just short to Southern Lab last year. They have to replace, I know, some guys in the trenches, but have a lot back for Coach Roussel and company as well, including a kind of dynamite and a small package in that backfield that I'm sure you'll talk about. But tell me about those Rebels and where they stand heading into this year, and if you have anything on the Rams as well.
Coach Lee Roussel was good enough to be one of our first guests on our first show this week. So he told us point blank, the most important part of this season will be the development of an inexperienced offensive line, right? He feels, skilled position. He's got the studs. You talk about the little man in small package, number 1, Dedrick Lassity, over 2,500 total yards last year, 42 touchdowns. And in the state championship, he lined up like in the Wildcat and threw a touchdown pass. Mm-hmm. So their quarterback, who again was just so young last year, just a sophomore, hadn't really played much football, Brock Bourgeois, he's back now with a year experience. And think about the year experience. Oh, we made it all the way to the freaking state championship game. So, that young man under fire learned a lot. So he's back. He's got wide receivers. He's talking about, I remember, and that was the first time I really heard about it, except the preview, I think the week before, he talked about in the state championship game at wide receiver, he started 3 wide receivers. 2 of them were 8th graders, and 1 of them was a freshman. So they're all back. And he's got a transfer in too. He said, keep your eye out for Nehemiah Phillip, who is a transfer, who said he's going to mix right in with those other receivers. So you got a stud running back, an experienced quarterback, 4 wide receivers to throw the ball to. So the offensive line, that's going to be key. Another guy that we might have forgot about last year because he tore his MCL in the season opener, Martell Henry, up front defensive lineman. Coach Lee says this is a guy who's going to be playing Saturdays. So that's a guy we need to really pay attention to. And then his nose guard is a sophomore, Ahmad Cage, who's got a lot of lineage. I think both his uncle and his father were both stud defensive players as well. He said he's got 3 of his 4 linebackers back, and he's got a defensive secondary led by Caden Brumfield, who really had a good camp. So listen to all those guys we just said. So, they 9-2 under Lee Roussel his first year coming out of Nichols, and obviously he's a River Parish guy. He was a starting center at Letcher, coached under Tim Detillier, coached for a few years under Coach Monica, went to Rummel under Jay Roth, was part of 2 state championships there, goes to Nichols where he learns to be a college football coach. Now he's back, but nobody saw a trip for Riverside to the state championship in year 2. And another big part of that, and I know you know him as well, is Chris Lashney, who was the defensive coordinator under the Bill Stubbs era. And then he went on to Southeastern to coach under Coach Selfo. And now he's back. So that's a formidable 1-2 punch in the River Parish. When you talk about Lee Roussel and Chris Lashney at Riverside, they're going to be a team to reckon with in 1A. And again, I expect them to make another deep run.
Last year, a lot was just kind of rode on that Riverside and St. Martin's matchup, but this is the last go round for Harlem and his 2025 class for the Saints. How much fun has it been to watch him come through in recent years and see St. Martin's kind of on the map from a playoff standpoint in a way that they haven't necessarily been in quite a while? And what are you hoping to see from those guys in that final go round for the 25 class?
Yeah, I guess this was my second or third time seeing the number 1 running back in the nation, at least for that class. I remember getting a glimpse of Leonard Fournette, back in the day. I wasn't too far into going to games yet because I was just getting started. But I was able to catch a little bit of him. And now Harlem Berry is really, really impressive kid. I was able to see them against the Riverside in the Riverside game. And he had a big game in that one. He just kind of does everything for them as you would expect. And you would think it's more of the same, but Riverside, they bring back a lot of their guys too. So I would think they'll probably have the upper hand in that matchup. But really, I was just kind of happy to see Harlem Berry stay. I thought I heard some buzz about maybe him with IMG or whatever prep school might be out there. But I was just happy to see him stay. And hopefully I can catch him at least a couple more times this year.
The District 1-1A is Arcadia, Cedar Creek, Glenbrook, Haynesville, Jonesboro Hodge, Lincoln Prep, Plain Dealing, and Ringgold. So I know Glenbrook is a team that you probably have eyes on as closely as anyone in that district with Reagan Smith, the job that he's done in his first couple of years there. And then Haynesville, obviously a program you've covered quite a bit for years with Coach Franklin and company. And we're on they made a dome trip last year with a relatively, by their standards, young roster. And so they'll be fun to watch again this year. Your thoughts from, kind of the outside looking in at that 1-1A?
Well, I want to start with Haynesville. Whenever I talk to anybody about Louisiana high school football, I spent time in Illinois, grew up there, and then went to high school in Florida. And then here, 3 pretty good high school football spots, Chicago, South Florida, and here. And I tell people, if you want to go see high school football in Louisiana, Evangel's great, Calvary's great, the big schools in the city, Airline's great, but go to Haynesville. Haynesville is Louisiana high school football, the stadium, the late kickoffs on Friday night, what the Franklins have done there, the family affair. If I went tomorrow or this year, week 1, and saw the roster and then compared it to a roster to that when I covered a game in 2000, the last names would be the same. They just would. That's how it's been in Haynesville, and the Franklins have just done an unbelievable job. So they're obviously going to be a contender this year. But Reagan Smith, near and dear to our hearts here, former Evangel Eagle. If there was a guy that I thought, man, after David Feaster and that craziness leaves a place like Glenbrook, who would be a guy? Reagan Smith. And he's having a lot of fun up there. Offensive-minded guy, sort of I'm going to say he's the 1A version of Justin Scoggin. I think he doesn't get as much love, obviously, as Justin Scoggin, but those two guys are so smart and so innovative, and I just love what Reagan does. And I also got to give a shout-out. They're not going to contend for the district, but Plain Dealing and Clint Walker, I talked to him at our banquet a couple days ago. They've got like 18, 19 guys. I mean, that's what you're looking at. They're playing teams like we just talked about. It's going to be tough, but those are the kind of coaches that are what make this game really special, because anybody can coach a team that's going 14-0 or 13-1, whatever. That's a lot of fun. But try coaching a team where you got 19 guys and you're playing those teams. So shout out to Clint Walker, and hope they can end up somewhere near 18 or 19 guys by the end of the year.
And then in 1A, I mean, have to keep eyes on really 3 districts with 5. 1A has St. Edmunds and one of the Westminsters up there in Opelousas, along with Opelousas Catholic. It's obviously been a highly ranked playoff team in recent years, and a deep district there in 5 1A. 6 1A, the big name of Vermilion Catholic, who was obviously in the Dome a couple of years ago, had the undefeated regular season last year, and has been a top 1A school in recent years there. And then out in 7 1A with a lot of Bayou Parish teams, Jeanerette, who had that resurgent year last year, got back to the quarterfinals for the first time since the early 90s. And so I guess looking at some of those teams, probably Opelousas Catholic, Vermilion Catholic, and Jeanerette are kind of the 3 that people outside the area know most to keep an eye on. But are all of those 3 teams, I mean, going to be in that mix where you're talking about they expect to be making deep playoff runs yet again? And are there any other kind of sleepers that we need to be watching from the outside too?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Westminster as a program, having coach there, that had experience at the college ranks, and he came in and has implemented things. Byron Porter, with the way that he, wants things there at that program. And I think they got 5 wins and made it to the playoffs, but, he's made it very clear, like, we're not just going to be satisfied with that, and we're not going to be focused on, just having a few wins, that we want to go much deeper, and we want to continue to build the program and continue to clean things up. Like you mentioned, also with Opelousas Catholic, they have an all-state receiver after, switching into more of in more of a spread type offense. They have an all-state wide receiver in Roderick Tesano. And I mean, those guys, with what they can do in that receiving core, they're going to be able to put up a lot of points. It's going to be hard for defenses to stop what he is able to do on the roster. And then, like you said, also Jeanerette, now when you get a winning season under your belt like that, you're able to build belief within the program. I think those guys are continuing to believe. Talking to coach in the preseason as well, he just said that he believes that these guys have gotten a lot stronger and a lot faster, and he believes that they could go out and win some ball games for the program again.
Vermilion Catholic, D'Artes a senior now, or he's still a junior? Yeah. I feel like he's been playing football out there for about a decade now. But what's for he and the Eagles? I'm sure they're itching to get back to the Dome, where they felt like they probably should have been again last year. What's been kind of the latest you've heard from that bunch, and kind of where they are in terms of mentality and how they're shaping up as the kickoff of the season approaches in just a few weeks now?
Yeah, Jonathan D'Artes is going to lead the way for them once again. I think the main key for them is playing that level of championship defense that we saw when they went back to the Dome. I think they had like 7 shutouts during that season. It may not be exactly like that, but if they can get that style of defense where they're holding teams to very little to no points, that's going to put them in a great position to let Jonathan D'Artes go out there and just do what he does all the time, which is run around, scramble with his legs, throw the football, and make plays and get the ball into the hands of his playmakers. And if they can do those things, then this team will find themselves right back in the Superdome like they were a few years ago.
Tell me a little bit about, what you see from Central Catholic and Covenant Christian, particularly this year, and just kind of your outlook for 7-1A overall.
Mm-hmm. I think, the landscape of that district has changed, because it used to be dominated by Vermilion Catholic, and I think they're moved up now. So, but Covenant Christian and Central Catholic have been 2 teams that have just been battling 2 very consistent programs, especially Central Catholic. They've always been pretty decent. And once again, even though they have some depth issues, they still have some hardworking kids in that program that play both sides of the field. Guys like Ben Case at quarterback, Tate Bott, he's a good athlete. Landon Lapari, defensive end, tight end. So Coach Grogan has a really good staff there, coaching staff. He's a former Patterson guy, so he was there with, around those Hilliards and Coach Minton back in the 2000s. And so they're consistent. Central Catholic, definitely one of our most consistent 1A programs the last, 20 years. You can always expect them to make the playoff. They've won district, well, they haven't won district in a while because, Vermilion Catholic has been the team to beat now. But I think now with Vermilion Catholic on, they can be right up there. You mentioned Covenant Christian. Coach Jesse Turner has done a great job of building that program back up. Coach Turner, former Ellender player, Nichols player, and he had some success at Ellender 2 years ago, getting that program to the playoffs, and which is pretty good. And Coach Turner, one thing about Coach Turner is he's a young guy. He has a lot of energy, just like Coach Grogan at Central Catholic, two really young guys who are just natural football diehards. And Covenant Christian has skilled players all over the field. They have some really good skill position players. They got Jaden Carter, Jahari Carter, the brothers, I guess. Two really good players. One of them is committed to Arkansas Monticello just last week. Connor Lally, a really good physical running back. Carson Abear. One thing I like about Covenant Christian, they got really two really good linebackers. Owen Trosclair, Peyton Trosclair. Those Trosclair boys, they can play, and they can really get physical, and they never get off the field because, it's 1A ball, you play defense and you got to go right back out there and contribute on offense. So, but I really do like Covenant Christian because they got some skill position players. They got some weapons. Bailey Strings is a really good receiver. You mentioned the Carter boys. So the key for Covenant Christian is, they have all of these great skill positions, but what are they going to do on the line? So if they can get the line position together, they may have some inexperience on the offensive line. They may not have the size there, but they do have weapons, and they're going to spread the ball all over the field. So I think Covenant Christian, is definitely going to be a team to watch out for. They're going to win some games this year under Coach Turner. And he's established a really good program there at Covenant Christian to watch out for, not only this year, but as the years go on. Some of the other teams in that district, Hanson has made the playoffs the last some of these years. They got some really good some kids there at Hanson. Centerville has really come along too. Coach Charles Jefferson has really raised the bar there. He's a former Assumption player, and they made the playoffs last year. I think they won a playoff game before losing, I think, to Maynham in the playoffs last year. But Centerville is definitely a growing program. They have some players. They may not have all of the numbers that you would expect from, because it's traditionally a small 1A school, but, they can compete. And that's the one thing that Coach Jefferson always wants to do. He wants to build a program, that can compete every night. And if he can, manage the low numbers, with the roster, I think that, they can definitely make some noise in the district also. And I'm trying to think the other teams in that district.
And then the only one you hadn't talked about is Jeanneret, who obviously they're pretty far out there to the west.
Yeah, Jeanneret, like you mentioned, they had a really good year last year. And Jeanneret is kind of, similar to, Franklin in a lot of ways. They got a lot of really good athletes there. And, it's just a matter of if they can bring it all together. And, that's going to be a really hard team to beat because they got athletes there. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to watch them that much. But, I know that one thing you can expect is, they have athletes. And if you have athletes in 1A, you can compete because, it's really hard to defend. But, a lot of people are going to say, Central Catholic Covenant Christian might be the favorite. You can also throw maybe Jeanneret in there. It's going to be a fun district for 1A. They play really good 1A ball down here, in Houma, Thibodeau, Morgan City areas. So I think it's going to be a fun district. Central Catholic, you can't count them out. Covenant Christian, I'm really looking forward to see what Coach Turner does there. I think this year is going to be a really good year for them if they can stay healthy and really take advantage. Those two Carter boys are really good, and if you don't know them yet, you're going to hear about them this season. That's for sure.
Now, the other district with Ascension Catholic is going to be interesting too when you factor in Lowell Narcisse being the head coach at Ascension Catholic. He comes in with a scheme and a plan, and he's probably going to put the ball in the air a little more, but the emphasis will be trying to get the ball again to Chad Elsie Jr., who was really one of the guys that I would say is one of the two most dynamic playmakers we have. Him and Kyrie Paul from Estruma, that a lot of people maybe don't know about. But Elsie, they may actually throw it to him a little more, and for good reason. They are having to retool their line, and it may take a little while. It's kind of the reverse deal where linemen buy your skill players a little time. The skill players may need to buy a little time for the linemen to fall in place to get the knowledge and experience, and also, new head coach, new system. But it'll be interesting to see how they do. You've got Pete Villia, who's taken over at East Iberville. He's a former UL player. Was it Plaquemine for a number of years, and kind of eager to get this head coaching job. So I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. It seems like they, at least social media wise, have a lot of enthusiasm and are looking forward to the season. They always have their share of athletes, and I think he's kind of looking to build and stay there for a while. Mark Brown at White Castle, they have a lot of kids back. Now the key is, how far does Ascension Catholic come back to the pack, or do they? And how close to these other teams, whether it's East Iberville, White Castle, and you also have to add, we have a newbie in the mix in North Iberville. How do the rest of these guys, do they move closer like St. John? St. John made some strides last year. How close do they move to that group in the middle, and how close does everybody else move to Ascension Catholic? And how much of a challenge is there? We got to see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that North Iberville team too. It's one where we're all kind of waiting to see what exactly it looks like on some Friday nights, but I know they do have some talented young athletes there that I had a chance to see throughout the spring and summer. So it'll be fun to watch them, back one way or another.
Oh yeah, they've got some talented athletes, and they have probably Josh Gast is the head coach, but they have so many coaches on that staff with a wealth of experience who have been around. They've coached around the championship level. They had a couple of guys who left to take other positions, but it's kind of like a cradle of coaches revisited in one way or another. It was kind of like a comfort zone, bringing a team up through the JV ranks to get to varsity. So I think it's going to be fun to watch them play too, and fun to actually have games there.
And for you, probably more so looking at District 3-1A, Lakeview, LaSalle, Logansport, Montgomery, Northwood, Lena, and St. Mary's, where obviously Logansport is a long ways away for you, more up to the Shreveport area. St. Mary's right there in Natchitoches, though those two programs have been kind of the top two teams to watch in terms of a statewide perspective from that group. What are your thoughts on St. Mary's this year and the 1A schools that you have your eyes on overall?
I feel like St. Mary's will take a step back this season. I mean, they had a big senior class last year that they got them to Thanksgiving football as well. But I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. I'm interested in seeing what Keidron Sistrunk is going to do in his first job. Obviously, he knows the Natchitoches area very well, after having been a coach at Natchitoches Central and now at St. Mary's. And now I'm interested in seeing what he does in his first job there. St. Mary's is always going to be scrappy. They're always going to play hard. They're always going to go into do pretty well. But I think they're going to take a step back. And it would not surprise me if they be more like 500 and more of a first-round casualty this year, because I just think, I just think that it's going to, like I said, they're not going to get that same stuff. But it's just going to be after that. Can they build up something going on for it? I think in the district, a better team in the district would probably be Montgomery, where last season, they came in having had a long losing streak and even losing their first 2 games. They went quickly from a team that had a 17-game losing streak, and we didn't know what was going to happen to them, to a team having a 5-win season and everything. And yeah, you don't have Brian Williams, the longtime coach, that's there anymore, but his son Taylor's coming in there and now stepping in there. And so I don't think there's going to be that much change when it comes down to everything that the coaching styles and everything else like that. Jacorian Shepherd is a guy that I think they're looking at this year that can be a good running back and a good athlete for them. They're going to lean towards him a little bit. And Montgomery feels like that they could probably be finished at least in the top half of that district, and give Logan Sport a good chance in that district, even though I know Logan Sport has graduated some guys in there. I think after that, LaSalle is going to be LaSalle. I mean, they changed coaches as well. I think they could probably finish 4th in that district. And then after that, obviously, it's going to be Lakeview and Northwood, where Lakeview, you go from Andy Boone to now Lawrence Seawood there. But I think they've always had good athletes, and the same thing for Northwood. It's just getting them to come over there and getting them to buy in. But I think that matchup will be interesting, and also for them dropping from 2A to 1A, I think that'll be a little bit interesting for them, where they don't have to worry about the face against the Mannies and Mansfields and all those schools anymore. So there's that. The 2 1A one, because I knew it used to be 4 1A, but the 2 1A teams, I think Block and Delta. Block is trying to get better and everything else like that. So of course it's going to be a little bit of a long way for them. Delta, interesting to see does Tyron Singleton, what type of role does he play on the team this year? I know he was a wide receiver last year with his brother. I think the other Singleton that they had, Javari, but does he get more quarterback reps where he can have free reign as far as like running the ball around, or do they have somebody that does that for him so he can get the ball in open space? But if they could, they showed that they could rely on one player last year, but I think if they can do the same thing, they'll probably have just as amount of success in that district right there, because I think there's not a lot of teams in that district that can really get to them, but I think they'll probably have a chance of probably finishing somewhere in the top half of that district too.
Yeah, that district will be really interesting because you have St. Frederick that has been for years so used to having to deal with OCS or Oak Grove or both and whatnot, and they're in there now. But St. Fred's has to replace a lot of guys who have headed elsewhere. General Trask has kind of come on in recent years, and I don't know as much about what they have right now coming back, but that district has a chance to be fairly open, I feel like, compared to what some of those 1A districts have been in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's going to be better than the district that they had last year when you just had, Cicely Island, Block, also Delta, but then you also had, Delhi Charter, and some of the other teams there. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting. You add those two teams in there. Trash has had at least some good seasons in recent years past. And like you said about St. Fred, they've always been a very hard team, but yet with Andy Robinson now going to Neville, it's going to be interesting to see what they do right there. I've always enjoyed to see them play, and I always enjoyed to see him coach. But I think it gives them a little bit of infusion there, but it is still going to be very interesting regardless.
St. Fred right now has to be looking around and saying, of all the fluctuations through the years, and now we don't have Oak Grove, OCS, Mangum, any of those guys with us anymore. And so there's a real opportunity from a district standpoint for those guys. When you look at some of the 1A teams in the northeast portion of the state, what kind of stands out? Because as much as we talk about some additions to some other programs, St. Frederick is one that has a lot of guys that are now heading elsewhere that they're going to have to replace.
Yeah, they fascinate me this year. They've got a new head coach and Chip Builder back. We talked about Andy Robinson going to Neville, and he counted it up for me. 14 guys that would have been eligible to play this year have left. It's a lot of players, especially for a 1A school. And we're talking about, your starting backfield, Caden Miller at receiver. Plus, you always got the question mark of William Patrick. Like, will William Patrick play? That last year I had those conversations with Andy throughout the year about William Patrick, and he was like, he's going to play. I'm telling you, he's going to play. He's going to play. And I'm like, it's week 8. I don't think he's going to play, Andy. And then he ends up playing against Cedar Creek right at the end there. But for those of you who don't know, he's committed to LSU, great baseball player. He's one of those athletes that could be good at anything he wants to be. But Chip Bodeback he practiced a little bit with Chip, and Chip's like, I want him out here. Like, I'd love to have him out here with us. So, will they be able to kind of weather that storm? They still got some really good players coming back. St. Frederick does, but this could have been the year. If you're looking at OCS kind of and I know they're out of the district, but if it would have all been the same, OCS kind of has some question marks this year. And, the district's not exactly a strong one. You just kind of went through those teams there. I still think St. Frederick has a chance to win this district. Maybe Delta Charter is a team that could push them to win it. But overall, I think St. Frederick has a great chance to win it. And this is after losing all those players, because defensively, they still got some really good players coming back, most notably Sam Police, Simeon, Owen O'Neill, Daryl Cooper. They've got some guys. But the question is, like, can they figure it out offensively after losing your entire backfield and losing one of your key playmakers in Caden Miller and possibly not ever having William Patrick? Who knows if he will suit up this year?
Yeah, the William Patrick deal has been so interesting because obviously to be as talented of a baseball player as you have to be an LSU commit, he's someone that I think in a solid 2025 football recruiting class in Louisiana is probably a top 40 or 50 guy in the state. Yeah. And that's, being potentially conservative.
Well, Jared, I've had so many conversations with people who ask me, they're like, could he play football? And I'm like, yeah, he could. Yeah. Like it sounds silly to say he could be as good a football player as a baseball player, right? We know that the upper echelon gets recruited by LSU. Like, LSU comes knocking, you got to be special. But I'm telling you, man, I saw this guy, and I know it's 1A, but, man, we saw him make plays on both sides of the ball. I think, 2 or 3 years ago, he had over 100 tackles on defense, and he's high-pointing the ball on offense. And I was talking with Chip Bodeback. He's like, we practiced with him some at quarterback. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this kid's a natural. He could start right now for us at quarterback. So just saying, he is one of those guys that whatever he kind of puts his mind to, I think he could be great at. He's a great track star, too. But he'd be a weapon if you could get him out there, man. He'd give you a big shot in the arm.
With that District 4-1A at the 1A level, Basile, Elton, Grand Lake, Hamilton Christian, Maryville, and Oberlin. Grand Lake is the team that we saw was such a great story, making the run to the state championship game a few years ago, the COVID year, after everything storm and all the things that were going on there. And they've been, a top 10 to 15 type team in the LSWA rankings the last couple of years. And you certainly have some good history with some of these other programs there. What am I looking at in Southwest Louisiana for Class 1A?
This district is always so funny to me because they're all the same. They all do the same thing, and which one can do it better? Each and every one of them. They all want to pound the football. It's who can stop the run. That's what it comes down to. Look, I think Grand Lake's got. I like what I see from Grand Lake. East Beauregard's always going to be right there. Goodness, when you run that double wing, double tight, it's almost unstoppable. Oberlin's also in there. That's another fun district. It's that one is always a fun district because you never know what you can expect on a Friday night. It's not outside of the couple of years with Grand Lake. There's never been a real clear runaway favorite in that district because any given Friday night in that district, something can happen.
And then, just giving a little bit of love to that West St. John program. There's so much history there, so much tradition. It's been tough to watch them have some of these down years, but hopefully they can get a chance to kind of take a positive step back in the right direction because it's a lot of fun when they are at the top of their game. And so it'd be great to see them progress back that direction, hopefully.
What a traditional power. From the Lori DuPont era, and then Robert Valdez, takes them to a state championship. And then Brandon Walters, who was one of the assistants for Coach Valdez, when Coach Valdez and Coach Davis both go to Scotlandville, Coach Walters takes them to the promised land, 2017 state champs. But after that, it just kind of fell apart. And the last couple of years, there's been, questions on who's in charge and the administration and the coaching. So I need to get back to West St. John because in all fairness, I haven't been there in a few years. So I haven't spoke to the coaches. I don't know the players like I used to know. But again, like you said, it's fun when West St. John is winning. And, that's always, one of the greatest rivalries was the Railroad Classic, when they would play against St. James and a beautiful, big trophy. And, usually a train would go by West St. John right during the game. So I'm pulling for them. I don't know too much about them. I'm going to dive into it. And the next time I see you, I'll give you my West St. John knowledge. But, hoping for the best for those guys because there's always great kids that we've covered through the years. And, we want them to be back. The River Parish is complete when West St. John and all 8 schools are jamming. When we started River Parish football 2010, it was St. James, the team that was left out. After Coach Gailey, the late great Coach Gailey left, there was 2.5 years they didn't win a game. St. James was 0-10, 0-9, and finally, they got Coach Jenkins and they won a couple games, and that was Lowell Narcisse his freshman year, and then they returned to prominence. So let's hope the same thing for West St. John.
No doubt. Well, Eric, man, I appreciate your time and your perspective and information and everything so much.
You got it. Thanks for having me on. And I promise you the next time after I get a couple weeks under my belt of covering these teams, I'll have some better info, some more current names, and I'll be looking forward to it. I'm thrilled to be back.
Huge thanks again to everyone who took some time to share their info and outlooks on what should be another awesome Louisiana high school football season. Make sure to check out all of their work throughout the season, and make sure to subscribe to the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel. I'm Jarrett Roser, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thanks so much for your passion and support of high school sports around our state. Thanks so much for tuning in here, and make sure to keep an eye out for the rest of these previews.